The people of Jamaicans, this urgent message is for you. Today, I speak to unmask the corrupt agenda that have been happening within Holness administration in Jamaica. They built an empire on lies and convinced the people it was a government. They buried the truth beneath years of polished speeches, handshakes, and promises that were never meant to be kept. They believed the people would remain blind forever. But what is buried eventually rises. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It roars. For too long, corruption in Jamaica has worn a suit, smiled before cameras, and pretended to serve. For too long, deception has stood at the podium pretending to speak for the people. But tonight, the mask is ripped off. The lies are exposed. And what stands before us is not leadership, but betrayal in its purest form. This is not just another scandal. This is not just another headline to be forgotten. This is the revelation of a system that has traded the future of a nation for private greed. And every Jamaican deserves to know the truth, no matter how loud, how uncomfortable, or how shocking it may sound. There comes a time in the life of every nation when pretending not to see becomes a greater sin than corruption itself. For too long, Jamaica has been told to smile through its suffering, to dance through its deception, to celebrate promises while their fulfillment is quietly stolen. But there is a moment when truth pierces through the fog of illusion, and that moment, my brothers and sisters of Jamaica, is now. They told you to wait. They told you to trust. They told you that progress takes time. And while they said these words, they were busy building castles, not in Kingston, not in Montego Bay, but in foreign lands, castles made from the sweat of ordinary Jamaicans, from the dreams of mothers who prayed for schools, from the taxes of men who labored in the sun, from the hope of youths who believed in a better tomorrow. This is not just corruption. This is betrayal wrapped in national colors. Andrew Holmes promised a Jamaica that would rise a nation of transparency, integrity, and development. But behind the polished speeches and camera flashes was an agenda carefully crafted not to build the people, but to blind them. His government turned public office into private business, national development, into a personal portfolio. And today, the mask has finally slipped. What stands before us is the naked truth that the Jamaican people have been robbed, deceived, and manipulated by the very leadership they trusted most. For years, corruption in Jamaica did not shout. It whispered. It didn't come with guns or open theft. It came with contracts, with tenders, with signatures that looked official but reeked of deceit. Projects were announced with grandeur schools, hospitals, housing estates, digital initiatives. Yet, like morning mist, they disappeared after the cameras were gone. You see, this was never incompetence. It was calculation. Funds meant for national growth were quietly siphoned into offshore accounts hidden through shell companies and foreign intermediaries. Behind every speech of development was a boardroom where the people's future was being sold piece by piece to those closest to power. And while the elite grew fat from these silent deals, the Jamaican people were left with empty promises and broken systems. The government spoke of modernizing Jamaica, yet entire communities remain without clean water. They boasted of education reform, but schools still struggle without adequate resources. They promised a new healthcare vision, but hospitals continue to crumble. The poor are told to be patient, but patience does not fill hungry stomachs or rebuild broken trust. When I look at Jamaica today, I see a nation rich in spirit, yet drained by betrayal. The corruption under Andrew Holmes' administration is not just about money. It is about manipulation, a deliberate effort to convince the people that nothing is wrong while everything is collapsing. And let me say this clearly, corruption does not thrive because the people are weak. It thrives because leaders learn to disguise theft as governance and deceit as diplomacy. They sign foreign agreements claiming to attract investment, but those same deals quietly hand over national assets to private foreign interests. They accept international aid for development. Yet, those funds mysteriously vanish into the networks of political allies. When you trace the money, it tells a story more shocking than fiction. A story of ghost contracts, inflated budgets, fake consultancy fees, and multi-million-dollar projects with no results. A story of ministers who signed off on deals that served no public good but filled private pockets. This is not rumor. It is reality, and it is time Jamaica faces it. Holness built his image on the facade of reform. He promised transparency, accountability, and modernization. But behind the carefully chosen words lay an agenda to centralize power, to control the narrative, to weaken the institutions that could hold him accountable. When journalists asked questions, they were branded as enemies. When whistleblowers came forward, they were silenced or intimidated. When opposition voice demanded accountability, they were accused of playing politics. But truth cannot be bullied into silence. Truth does not fear titles. And truth, no matter how long it sleeps, always wakes up. What we are witnessing now is the awakening of a nation. Jamaicans are beginning to see that their hardship is not a curse. It is the cost of corruption, that their unemployment, poverty, and crumbling infrastructure are not accidents of fate. They are symptoms of an illness deliberately spread by leadership that forgot its duty. And I tell you this when people discover that their suffering has a name. Their silence ends. For years, Holness built his political fortress on loyalty. Not loyalty to country, but to self-preservation. Ministries were filled with yes-men. State agencies became tools of propaganda. Public institutions were weakened, not by incompetence, but by design, because strong institutions would expose the truth. But every fortress has a weak point, and that weak point is always the truth. Recently, leaked documents have begun to surface. Procurement papers showing inflated project costs, internal memos, linking high-ranking officials to private companies bidding for government contracts, evidence of public funds diverted into private entities connected to political figures. It is a network of deceit so vast that it touches every corner of governance. And while these documents spread across the internet, the government has one answer: denial. But denial cannot bury evidence. It cannot erase the signatures, the transfers, the bank trails. Financial investigators, both local and international, are beginning to trace funds that moved from Jamaica's development budgets into offshore havens in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Dubai. Each transaction tells a story of promises broken, of futures stolen, and now, as the evidence becomes undeniable, the Holness administration scrambles for damage control. Press releases are drafted to dismiss the revelations as foreign interference. Loyal media houses soften the headlines. Spokespersons call it a smear campaign. But how long can a government deny what the people already see? How long can a man run from his own shadow? This is not about politics. It is about justice. It is about the dignity of the Jamaican people. When a leader betrays the trust of a nation, he does not just steal resources. He steals identity. He robs a people of their faith in governance. And once that faith is lost, rebuilding it takes generations. Jamaica's youth are now beginning to rise. They are demanding to, I don't know why their dreams are traded for luxury cars and foreign mansions. They are asking why their parents work 3 jobs and still cannot afford decent health care. They are demanding to know why billions vanish while communities decay. And I say to them, do not stop asking. Do not Let fear silence your questions. Because every great change begins with a generation that refuses to be deceived. Holness believed he could play the game of global respectability to smile before cameras while hiding corruption under the table. But what he failed to understand is that in the age of truth, there are no more dark corners. The world is watching and Jamaica is speaking. I speak today not as an adversary, but as an African brother who knows what corruption does to a nation. I have seen how it kills hope, how it cripples progress, how it turns strong nations into dependent ones. Jamaica cannot afford to be silent anymore. You cannot allow deception to become your culture. You cannot let one man's greed define your nation's destiny. To Holness, I say this with respect. Leadership is not about power. It is about purpose. You were entrusted with the hopes of a generation. You were given the keys to a people's future, but you chose secrecy over service, luxury over legacy. And though you may deny it, now history will write your name not as a builder, but as a breaker of trust. You may call this an attack. You may try to dismiss it as foreign meddling, but the truth does not need a passport. It crosses borders freely. It does not seek permission to speak. It speaks because silence is dangerous. And tonight, the truth has spoken. The protests in Kingston, the cries in Spanish Town, the chants across Montego Bay, these are not random acts of defiance. They are the heartbeat of a nation reclaiming its dignity. They are the sound of people who refuse to be prisoners of deception. And no government, no propaganda, no intimidation can silence the people who have seen the truth. Jamaica stands today at a moral crossroad. One path leads to silence and decay, the other to courage and renewal. The people must choose, because if they do not act, corruption will not just steal money, it will steal generations. To the Jamaican people, do not underestimate your power. You are not powerless. You are not voiceless. You are the soul of this nation. When you stand together, no leader can stand against you. And remember this, every corrupt system survives only because the people believe it cannot be challenged. But once that illusion breaks, the system falls. Let the world not remember Jamaica for the corruption of its leaders, but for the courage of its citizens. Let the name Jamaica stand not as a synonym for deception, but for defiance. The defiance of a people who chose truth over fear. Power built on lies will crumble, but a nation built on truth will endure. To Holness, I say this one last time. The time of deception is over. The people are awake. And when a nation awakens, no power can put it back to sleep. The mask has fallen. The truth is out, and Jamaica must never ignore this shock, because this is not just the unmasking of a leader. It is the awakening of a nation. May truth rise in Jamaica. May justice walk again among her people. And may the Caribbean and the world learn from this moment that power without integrity is nothing. And silence in the face of corruption is complicity. The hour of truth has come, and truth always wins in the end.